guys doing today?
Great.
Alright, so first of all, we'll talk about silver in the US. So silver, expensive jewelry, women like it. So let's hear Dean talk something about it. Alright, welcome Dean.
Hi. Hi. You're standing on end? Sorry about that. I want you to listen to something. I'm going to drop a couple of coins on the table and tell me if you can tell the difference between them. Now these are both same size, the same weight. They both say $1 US on it. This is the denomination. They're not the same coin. So listen to this. Now listen to this one. Can you hear the difference? This one is a 1971 Roosevelt dollar, and it's about 75% copper and 25% nickel. It kind of thunks a little bit. Where this is an 1879 S Morgan silver dollar, produced in the San Francisco Mint. It's 90% silver and 10% copper. It sounds a lot happier. So silver's been used for money pretty much throughout human history, at least what we've found. They found some really old coins. You know, the ancient Greeks had their drachma, the Romans had the denarius. The English, our recent colonial masters, had silver pennies, which were about the size of a dime, although they're made of pure silver. So I want to tell you a little bit about the history of silver, how it's been used in the U.S. both in early and later periods, after the discovery of the Comstock lode in Nevada, which was probably the richest lode of precious metals ever discovered in the world history. Certainly the largest one ever discovered in recorded history. So there's had silver around for a long time, but there was always problems with it. One thing, it was kind of scarce. There wasn't a lot of it to go around, and people would tend to hoard it because, you know, there really wasn't a safe place they could put their money. You could put it into a bank, but if the bank failed, you'd lose your money. No FDIC back in those days. Gold was used for coins quite a bit too, but gold was really too soft. It didn't work very well. So another issue with silver is a practice known as coin shaving. What they would do, a merchant, for instance, who would see 100 or so coins pass through his hands every day, he would take each coin in a sharp knife and shave off just a little fraction of that coin, just a percent or two, which isn't much. You can hardly even notice. But by the end of the day, you'd have a profit of 1 or 2 coins. And, it's fairly easy to do. And it really pissed the king off, I'll tell you. So early in the U.S., we had English money, of course, but that was a problem because once again silver was scarce, and the English did not permit any banks in the U.S., in any of the colonies. They had to be back in England. So, plus any taxes that you paid had to be paid in coin, which promptly went on a ship, went back to England, and they never came back to the colonies. So there was never enough coins to go around. So what mostly was used for coinage in the colonial period and in the early days of the Republic was Spanish reals, which were a Spanish silver piece about the size of one of these. What they would do with these is they would take a hammer and chisel, because a full dollar, that's just too big a denomination for most of the common purchases that people were making. They would take one of these and hammer and chisel and cut it in half. And they would cut it in half again, and they would cut each quarter in half one more time. So you had 8 pieces, or as they call them, Spanish pieces of 8. Arr. Actually, they are referred to most commonly as bits. I don't know, anybody who's been to high school in this country has heard the cheerleader chant, 2 bits, 4 bits, 6 bits a dollar. That's what that came from. 2 bits is a quarter. So that's how it was in the early days of the United States. They didn't have a lot of coin to go around. And then California, 1848, the Great California Gold Rush. Massive amounts of precious metals were found. Now I asked in the survey how long people had actually continuously traveled for any length of time, and most of it was only a couple of days. There was a few of about a month, but in 1848, if you wanted to get from the eastern coast of the United States to California, it took at least 4 months. Average was more about 6 months. For most people, it took over a year because they couldn't make it the whole distance in just one season. They had to winter over someplace along the way. So it really wasn't easy getting there. And a lot of folks died on the way, disease, accidents, starvation in some cases. And besides, once they got to California, the easy gold was all gone by 1849, so there wasn't anything left to be found. It had all gotten too industrial, needed too much capital to actually produce gold. So these guys just kept looking around and prospecting, and they drifted over the mountains into Nevada, and in the first ridge outside of Carson City, found the Comstock lode. Now there was a couple of guys up there prospecting up in the head of the canyon, doing the standard water pan prospecting for gold, trying to sort out the gravel. And they kept complaining about their mining gear was mucked up by this bluish clay. Well, as it turned out, that blue clay was electrum. It's 53% gold, 47% silver. And these guys should have gotten fabulously wealthy, but they lost it. Now, I got most of these details from a great book. It's called Mining Frontiers of the Far West, 1848 to 1880. It was written by a history professor at California Technology University. And Rodman Wilson Paul was his name, published in '63. Now, mining in Nevada was difficult. You know, I asked in a survey if anybody had actually ever been to Nevada. And if you've been out of any place other than Las Vegas or Reno, it is some really bleak country. I mean, there is nothing but rocks and sagebrush. Mostly rocks. Mark Twain had this to say about it. He was an early visitor to Virginia City, and he stayed a couple of years. He was a newspaper editor. He was too smart to go crawling in a hole in the ground. He said about the Nevada countryside, he said, "No flowers grow here, and no green thing gladdens the eye. The birds that fly over the land carry their provisions with them." Because, I mean, there was nothing there. There was no timber, there was no water, there was no arable land to grow food, for fodder for their animals. It was tough, but they found lots of silver. And that caused the price of silver to decline. Well, of course, the people who had the silver didn't like that. And as it turned out, about that same time, the United States government needed to raise money to prosecute the Civil War, and guns and uniforms and whatnot. So they arranged to make Nevada a state in 1864, even though there were only about 20,000 miners resident in the state. And time's up.
Take another minute
cool.
or so to get the point.
So, anyways, they had all this silver for to finance the Civil War, really. It became a state. And the U.S. went through a lot of contortions about that. They had a government mandate where they had to purchase 2 to 4 million ounces per month and make it into coins. So, nobody wanted all those coins. They just made them and stacked them up in the Federal Reserve vaults. And there was millions and millions and millions of these things just sitting there, and nobody wanted them. They were just too heady and too large to mess with. So, in conclusion, silver has a long history as being money, as coins. Throughout any recorded human history, you know, people have always thought of silver as money. It's really a symbol of what money is. And it sounds pretty cool when you drop it. I mean, listen, does it have a nice ring to it? Thanks. Questions? Yes.
What got you so interested in silver?
My father was a coin collector, and I inherited quite a bit. This one is an example. I like them. They're nice and big and, you know, valuable. It's pretty. You know, I like shiny stuff, but I don't like jewelry, so. Collect coins, yes.
What's the oldest coin you have in your collection?
The oldest coin I have is an 1858 trade dollar. It was actually a silver dollar like these. Before the big discoveries and before they started minting these ones in 1878, for foreign trade, okay, the U.S., they wanted to trade with China. They wanted tea and silk. But we didn't have anything that China wanted except silver. So the government minted these trade dollars. They made it illegal to use them for currency in the U.S. They were only for trade with foreign countries. And I don't know how I wound up with the one I have, or how my father did, but I have it. Yes?
Do you collect like any other, different coins from different countries?
I have a pretty good sack full of various